For most of my adult life, I thought American politics was a battle between the left and the right. That's what television told me. That's what campaigns told me. That's what social media tells you every morning before you've even had coffee, which is rude because nobody should have to choose a civilization-level enemy before 8:15. Pick a side, choose a team, find your jersey, memorize your talking points, and most importantly, never ask whether the game itself makes sense. Because if you ask that, somebody will hand you a podcast microphone and a flag-shaped lapel pin. Now, Democrats and Republicans absolutely disagree about some very real things: taxes, healthcare, energy, education, abortion, foreign policy. Those disagreements matter. They affect people's lives. Pretending otherwise would be dishonest. Also, it would make Thanksgiving considerably quieter, and we know that's not going to happen. But after years of watching politics, campaigning, talking with voters, and generally asking the kind of questions that make the room go, well, technically we have to end this meeting now, I've started wondering, what if left versus right is only part of the story? What if we've spent decades fighting the wrong war? Because something strange happens when you talk to actual people. Not influencers, not party strategists, not cable news personalities whose business model requires one of us to be furious before the second commercial break. Actual people. Buying groceries, working overtime, raising kids, wondering why every phone call to an agency ends with the person who says, "I completely understand," and then transfers them to the Department of Further Understanding. Those people disagree, a lot, but they also agree on some shockingly radical ideas. Corruption is bad. Government should be accountable. Transparency matters. Ordinary people should have a chance. Powerful institutions should answer to somebody. I know, very edgy. Next week, puppies are adorable and passwords should contain a number. So if people across the political spectrum agree on those basic principles, why does the country constantly feel like two cruise ships having an argument through megaphones? I think it's because we have one very loud political conversation and another one happening underneath it. The loud conversation is familiar: red versus blue, conservative versus progressive, rural versus urban, Fox versus MSNBC. The daily political cage match, brought to you by a man pointing at a map until a blood vessel in his temple files for workers' compensation. It's loud because conflict is easy to package. Here are 17 reasons why the other side is destroying America. Fits beautifully in a thumbnail. Let's examine carefully the administrative incentives and delegated authority. Gets you 3 views, 2 of which are Steve just accidentally refreshing the page. But the quieter conversation is about the machinery. Agencies, political parties, regulatory systems, lobbying networks, corporate monopolies, administrative structures. The machinery often survives regardless of who wins. Different drivers, same vehicle, same dashboard light that nobody can identify. And that does not mean that every person inside an institution is bad. That's not the argument. Most people are just trying to do their job, protect someone, avoid a mistake, get through a meeting without being volunteered for the snack committee. The problem is that systems have incentives. A company wants to survive. A political party wants to win. An agency wants to justify its existence. An HOA wants to know why your recycling bin is spiritually misaligned with the rest of the neighborhood, and have you thought of an exorcism? Those things are not automatically evil. They're what systems do. But the question is, who keeps the system accountable when the system's natural incentive is to protect itself? Let me introduce Steve. Steve is not a cartoon. Steve is every competent person who has ever inherited a good idea after it's been through 7 meetings and emerged wearing a lanyard. Someone says, "We need one more form." Steve thinks, okay, maybe the form prevents mistakes. Then someone says, "We need someone to review the form." Steve thinks, okay, review is good. And then someone says, "We need a supervisor to review the reviewer." Steve starts looking towards the exit, but professionally. Eventually, someone creates a training program explaining how to complete the form required to request permission to submit the form. And Steve has one question. At what point did solving the problem become building a small, well-funded civilization around the problem? That question is not anti-government. It's not anti-business. It's not anti-anybody except possibly whatever software made the form require a fax number. It is a question about consequences. The question politics keeps forgetting. Then what? Politics loves beginnings. Beginnings have speeches. Beginnings have ribbon cuttings. Beginnings have applause. We're creating a new program. Applause. We're launching a bold new initiative. Applause. We're forming a task force. More applause. Plus one person in the back already updating LinkedIn. Nobody holds a press conference and says, today we're announcing a careful review of whether this idea will create unintended consequences 5 years from now. That speech does not test well. It's hard to fit maybe this becomes a mess in 2031 onto a bumper sticker. But the announcement is not the policy. The implementation is the policy. A law is not just words passed by legislators. It's who interprets it, who enforces it, who decides exceptions, who has discretion, who reviews mistakes, and who answers it when an ordinary person gets caught between a rule and a very calm automated phone menu. That's why then what is not cynicism. It's a grown-up optimism. It's saying if we are going to use power to solve a problem, let's care enough about the people to follow the power all the way to the consequences. What problem does it solve? Who benefits? Who pays? Who administers it? What incentives does it create? What happens if it fails? What happens if it works too well? What happens if somebody uses it exactly as written, but in a way that makes everyone on cable news suddenly rediscover the phrase constitutional concern? Those are not gotcha questions. Those are questions you ask before giving a toddler a permanent marker. And yes, I'm comparing government authority to a toddler with a marker. The toddler has fewer consultants, but the walls will still need repainting. Look back across the issues that we've covered this summer. Property rights, local control, occupational licensing, civil asset forfeiture, privacy, criminal justice, housing, healthcare, transparency. All different issues, different voters, different coalitions, but the same pattern keeps showing up. Citizens ask for accountability. Institutions explain the procedure for requesting accountability. Citizens ask for transparency. Institutions say the information is available after a review period, a fee schedule, and what appears to be a side quest from a mid-level video game. Citizens ask for opportunity. Institutions protect barriers that were initially installed to prevent some entirely different problem back in 1987. And again, that does not mean everyone involved is a villain. It means nobody wakes up in the morning and says, I hope to make this impossible for a normal person. Most people wake up saying, I hope legal approves the new portal. The outcome can still be absurd. This is where the political conversation gets more interesting. A Democrat worried about corporate influence, a Republican worried about government overreach, a Libertarian worried about concentrated power, and an Independent worried about corruption all walk into a bar. They may not agree on every solution, but they're often asking the same foundational question. Who is accountable? Notice that none of these questions needs permission to be in the room. Why does this institution have so much authority? Is as normal a civic question as how much does this cost and who gets hurt if we do nothing? Healthy politics can hold all three at once. It may require a larger table, but we have those. We call them committees. This is also why good intentions cannot be the end of the conversation. Good intentions are where a policy begins. They're not a receipt showing that the policy arrived safely. If I say, I bought this ladder because I intend to clean the gutters, nobody says, wonderful. Then we can skip the part about where you put it on the ground. Intentions matter. Of course they do. But implementation is where the people live. Somebody has to read the rule, pay the fee, wait in the lobby, lose the afternoon, explain their case to a person who does not make the rule, but does have a stamp. That person is often Steve. Metaphorically, sometimes literally, Steve is a surprisingly common name in government buildings. Every action creates a second effect. Sometimes good, sometimes bad, always real. A rule meant to protect consumers can also keep a new worker from getting started. A program meant to help people can become so hard to access that only people with a spare Tuesday and a color printer can use it. A power created for an emergency can hang around long enough to develop a parking space and a retirement plan. None of this means we shrug and say, well, I guess nothing can be fixed. It means we do the more demanding thing. We fix problems while remaining skeptical of permanent machinery built in the name of temporary certainty. That's not pessimism. That's what it looks like to care whether the brakes work after the ribbon cutting. So, Steve, who's now seen enough forms to qualify for a minor in paperwork studies, develops a test, the universal government test. It doesn't care whether the idea comes from Democrats, Republicans, Libertarians, Conservatives, Independents, or your neighbor's schnauzer that barks with a German accent. Question 1. Does it solve the problem? Not does it sound good at the podium. Not can we put it on a mailer with a flag behind it. Does it solve the actual problem? Question 2. Then what? Who enforces it? Who pays? Who gets discretion? What happens when the rules collide with real life, as they always do, usually on a Friday at 4:47 p.m.? Question 3. Would we support this if the other side controlled it? This is the hard one, because almost everybody loves a powerful tool when their team has the handle. The election happens, the handle changes hands, and suddenly we're all legal scholars standing in the kitchen at midnight, explaining why the founders definitely meant this exact thing. The answer to every disagreement is not do nothing. That's just lazy. The answer is to build rules, limits, and accountability sturdy enough to survive a change in whoever's in charge. If you only support a power when the person you like is holding it, you don't support a principle. You support a temporary convenience with a campaign logo. Steve finally reaches the people in charge. They're standing around a car with 6 steering wheels asking the same question he's been asking all day. So, who's responsible? That is the joke, but it's also the point. The problem is not always bad people. It's bad incentives, diffused authority, rules that outlive reasons, a system so focused on protecting each piece of itself that nobody owns the whole outcome. The conflict underneath left versus right is responsiveness versus insulation. Does the institution listen, explain, correct, and answer? Or does it become so distant from ordinary people that the only way to reach it is to fill out a form explaining why you deserve a form? And that question is hopeful because it gives us something concrete to demand. Name who decides. Publish what they decide. Make it possible to appeal mistakes. Keep authority close enough that people can reach it. Do not give anyone power you would be terrified to see used by the other side. A healthy republic is not necessarily a one where everybody agrees. Frankly, if we all agreed, someone would immediately start an argument about whether that's just too much agreement. The goal is not sameness. The goal is accountability. Government is not a machine that belongs to whoever wins the last election. It's ours, which means our job is not to just fight over who gets the steering wheel. It's to ask whether the brakes work, whether the manual is visible, and whether the people with the keys can answer the question without transferring us to the Department of Further Understanding. Actually, don't ask Steve. Steve's been through enough. Ask the person with the authority. Then ask what happens next. Then keep asking until government remembers the oldest rule of self-government. Power answers to the people. And if we can fix that, honestly, the rest may be easy.